Hello, my fellow Alaskans. Hold on just a moment here. Make sure everything is all connected up. Yep, we are live on all channels. You can currently find us on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, X, and also live on our website at politadick.com. Tonight I just wanted to do a little bit of ranting, so to speak, about the Alaska news for the last 3 weeks. It's been a couple weeks since I did a live stream that wasn't something that was politically related going on in Juneau or with the governor. And just wanted to give you an update on where we're standing at currently within our state of Alaska. You guys all know the national news, what's been going on with Trump and USAID and all of that there, and how all of these unelected NGOs throughout the world and locally, and I say locally as within the United States, have all been just padding their pockets with this government aid program that was supposed to be providing aid to all the countries around the world. Well, how does this relate to Alaska? Well, Alaska has 732 NGOs operating within our state, on top of another 6,000 plus nonprofits. Then you have our Alaska legislators currently right now working with a different sort of NGO. They're not necessarily fall underneath that bracket. They're under the private market. But Alaska Gas Development Corporation, and then you've got all the interaction that's going on with the slope and the Cook Inlet down there in the southeast Alaska. We have plenty of problems going on, and we've got this big circle of all these different conglomerates coming together. Like, did you know today down in Juneau, this entire week is Education Week in Juneau? And currently there's 100 plus Alaska School Board, Alaska School Assembly members, and students down there in Juneau. And they are been flown in from all around the state. And these all tie in because they are a part of the NGOs, the non-government organizations, that in the case of for education, NEA Alaska and Alaska AFL, two other NGOs out there, are currently sitting in Juneau at this very moment. They flew in over 100 plus people to be there this week. And let's just give you a concept of the kind of money. This is our money, the money that goes out in taxes that they receive, and they're taking our money, and I say our money and more of an emphasis, our permanent fund dividends every year, to pay these 100 plus people to fly down to Juneau, to go and lobby them that they need more money to be considered one of the worst in the nation and one of the worst in 40 countries around the world when you take the United States as a whole picture for education. But these NGOs, the 120 I think there is or so right around there that have flown down there, and you look at the cost of what it takes to get these people into Juneau in the first place. Again, they're not from Juneau, they're from Yucatan, Bethel, Yakutat. You can go all around the state for all the different school districts out there. Anchorage has sent people down there. Students, teachers, assembly members, Alaska School Board members are currently sitting in front of our legislators, and they were today in front of, I believe it was the Alaska House Finance Committee is who they were sitting in front of, and they were discussing all the reasons why they need more money. None of it was to improve education. Not a single discussion that I heard come out of those folks was about improving education. It was all about preserving what they currently have going on down there. And cost-wise, if you look at 120 people, and 120 times they had to be either put on a plane or a ferry to fly there and fly back to get back. The hotel rooms that they're having to purchase while they're down there for their extent of their stay, whether it's just overnight for today's Monday's conference and they did their one and gone type situation, or they're there for the entire week, and we're going to assume that the majority of them are going to be staying there for the entire week, lobbying it out, sitting down in front of all the different legislators that are going to have, excuse me, to make that final vote for the education budget this year. And we're talking the bill HB 69. The education bill that's going to add $1,804 onto their budget that they already currently get. It's around $6,000 for the student base allocation. Add another $1,804 on top of that. We're talking another $1 billion increase to the education funding overall. Now, last year they've got $2,880 million. Let me repeat that. $2,880 million to spend on education here in Alaska. We are literally the highest in the nation for what it costs per student to do education. ASD came out with their proposed budget. When you break it down with the number of students that are going to school there, it broke down to $21,380 per student is what they're getting there to provide one of the worst educations in our state. They are literally really bad, especially if you remove the small handful of charter schools that are within their jurisdiction there. When you move them out of the equation, they are the worst anywhere within the state. And that's virtually true for just about all of Alaska. I mean, currently we're ranked 51st out of 53, and that includes the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and Guam, just so you know how it could be over 50. And so you look at the cost of what is taken for these NGOs, these non-government organizations that have state, local, and federal funding, slid over into their organizations to distribute however they want it to go. And that's where the control comes from us. We don't have any. We are living on the Democrat plantation, every single one of us. We are slaves to it every single day. Our Alaska legislators can care less about what our everyday Alaskans' futures are, those of us that are living in poverty and are collecting the state welfare in one form or another, all 267,000 plus of us Alaskans that are, and I say us because I'm an Alaskan, I don't fall in the category of collecting welfare. But I should. Honestly, I mean, I probably even qualify for it for all I know, but I was raised to take care of myself, not be dependent on handouts when they're supposed to be hand-ups. Now, I will not say that in my lifetime I have never asked for a hand up. I don't know a person out there that hasn't unless they come from money. The rest of us who have had to work our scrape and claw our ways to where we are at and our economic level within our state, we have worked adamantly to achieve what we have, what we own. But we really don't own it. I mean, think about it. Your property, you don't pay your taxes, they just come and take your home. You don't pay your mortgage, they just come and take your home. But you pay off your mortgage and you still pay taxes. And if you don't pay those taxes, they steal your home that you paid for. See, you're living on the Democrat plantation. You are always under the control of government. Government has every access to everything that we ever do here in the state of Alaska and throughout our nation, unless you are one of the sovereign. Alaska Natives got it really good here in the state of Alaska. The percentage of land that they own, that they decide their own internal tax base that they want to do as a sovereign nation, on top of taking the state taxes that they collect through these NGOs of their own. You got Siri, you got Nana. I mean, I could go down the list of all the NGOs that work in that department. Four Acre Group, Cook Inlet Housing Authority. I mean, the list is endless. And they got their own little NGOs out there. Like I said, there's 723 NGOs out there that are collecting state, local, and federal monies for their existence. And here's the big circle. We just keep living on this plantation, and who's actually profiting from all of this? Well, it's the NGOs. The NGOs are sitting out there and they're writing the bills that the legislators, that they use their tax money given to them through all the different three branches of our so-called government out there. They've taken that money and they funded it into their own organizations, and they've distributed it, even though it may have been for improving the energy efficiency here in Alaska so that we are more compliant to helping to save our climate. So here's a real life example. The Alaska state government received a federal grant, and part of that grant had to foster to be distributed through the NGOs to build this particular project. Well, in the part of this grant making process, it had to do with climate change. So Rasmussen Foundation, and they were supposed to be doing good with this money, took a little bit of a chunk of that was given to them in a grant, and that was to worry about this, to help facilitate the movement towards clean energy to be able to get ourselves into the future and have a planet to live on. This is the scenario behind how this grant is given. Now, this grant was given to the Rasmussen Foundation, and they took that $2 million grant that they got, and they gave it to the Native movement. Now, the Native movement, another NGO, like the Rasmussen Foundation, the Native movement has a group of about 100 other nonprofits that work underneath them that they distribute this $2 million grant out to. You know how this money just kind of flows. Here's the top level. It was meant to do good. It was supposed to be helping our energy securities here in Alaska. But now that $2 million, that out of that, say, $500 million federal grant that we got to improve the energy reliances that we have in Alaska, whether it be nuclear, hydro, air, solar, you name it, you kind of get the idea of what I mean by energy. I'm a great spokesman for this company here. And they take this money, and so it went to the Alaska Native Movement. And so the Alaska Native Movement took this $2 million grant that was given to them by the Rasmussen Foundation, and they gave that money to the Alaska Fairbanks Climate Coalition. I always screw up their name. Now, the Alaska Fairbanks Climate Coalition is actively pushing to get rid of GVA, the electric power source throughout Fairbanks in the North Slope. They are responsible for helping EPA get the air restrictions where you see the stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3 alerts that they put out there. They're the ones that are responsible for replacing your pellet stove and your firewood stove and bringing you in a more energy compliant device, which, by the way, if you do sign up for that program and do get that to happen, you can never use another pellet stove within your location ever again. You sign the rights away on your property that you own to be able to ever have something like that again. Same with a fireplace. If you trade out your fireplace, you will never be allowed to put in another fireplace ever again because you took this money, and when you go to resell your place, the new owners are stuck under those same restrictions because that is grandfathered into your home once you accept that money. And you do this energy improvement of your house. We're going to clean the atmosphere to make sure we're under 2.5 million micron particle going through the air, so you're not breathing in all of this, and you'll live longer and healthier lives. Meanwhile, it's 50 below outside. The electrical grid got taken out because somewhere it was snowing really, really bad, and it ended up breaking the terminal that supplies the power to your location. You're without power. We'll give the great apocalyptic windstorm that we had a few years ago that completely knocked out the power for days on end. And I'm sure you guys all remember that when that happened. People's houses were freezing up, flooding out because their water pipes were breaking, all that good stuff. If they had a fireplace, they could have at least kept their place warm, and less likely that any of that kind of harm would have ever happened. Well, imagine you're in Fairbanks. Well, now here's news for Fairbanks. Fairbanks, through the NGO actions of the Alaska Native group, who passed the money from the Rasmussen Foundation that they received over to the Fairbanks Climate Action Coalition, that has been lobbying the Fairbanks Assembly on a daily basis every time they meet. And in fact, I mean, they have protests out, they do tons of fundraising, everything else, that have been pushing into renewable energy, which is not reliable, that has also helped impose all of these restrictive EPA laws that says you can no longer burn a fireplace at -50 when there's no power in your house without receiving a fine, unless you have a specialized permit that says you're allowed to burn that firewood in that fireplace. That, by the way, had to be kiln dried before you even got it into your house at it, because it only is allowed to, wood is only allowed to be sold in Fairbanks that has a certain metered water level in it. If it goes past a certain amount when they go to test the firewood, you're not allowed to burn it there in Fairbanks. So that also restricts on where they can get and the type of firewood. They can't just go harvest their own like I do and go and get the money. No, they have to literally go and pay someone some big bucks so that here's the big circle to keeping you under the control in that Democrat plantation that they're building for all of us, the 15-minute cities. If you ever heard that or never heard of that, go look it up. You'll kind of get a concept of where I'm going with this whole conversation. So, and it may seem like I'm rambling. I know I started out with education. I'll get back to them here in just a little bit. But now the Fairbanks Action Coalition has now made it so that it's even more impossible for anything to happen there within Fairbanks. Now let's bring it back to the Cook Inlet that I was talking about earlier, and we've got the private industries like Hillcorp and ConocoPhillips and all those guys that supply the oil, supply the natural gas, like Hillcorp, very good, big on the natural gas down in the Cook Inlet. And they're running out of the natural gas. The fields down there have been in production for the last 50 years. The platforms that are permanently out there in the water right at the moment, the ones that can be feasibly still be used, and Hillcorp came in and they brought a lot of these dead gas wells back to life again. But they've now stretched it to the limits of how much they can extract out of those areas. They're being depleted to the point that they're no longer going to be able to produce any gas because there's not enough pressure. Excuse me, there's not enough pressure down there anymore to push that gas up the pipeline and into the holding reserves that they have to be able to supply us with our natural gas. So here we are, Fairbanks, who has a contract with the LNG suppliers on the Cook Inlet, are finding out that their contract is not going to be renewed this next year, and there is not going to be the flow of LNG going through the rail belt for energy like they used to get, because they don't have enough LNG to keep the rail belt completely covered if they continue to keep supplying Fairbanks with their energy needs too. So Fairbanks has come out and they're all crying, oh, woe is me, we're supposed to be the self-reliant green place now that we shouldn't be relying on these pollutants like LNG. Well, now they've already announced they're going to have rolling blackouts. Good possibility they're coming very soon. And because they don't have enough energy to be able to keep the lights on throughout the entire place, because GVEA, who I mentioned earlier, no longer has the LNG gas to keep their power plants running at full capacity in the middle of winter when people are running their electric heaters, because they're no longer allowed to have a fireplace within their home, and they're not along an LNG line that has been built, which is a very small infrastructure within Fairbanks. You got to be within the inner cities to even have LNG being supplied to your home. So now you've got all of these, and I brought up the private industry, I brought up the NGOs like Rasmussen Foundation, the 4 Acre Group, which also hosts, the Alaska Cook Inlet Housing Authority, and then you've got the Alaska Housing Authority, which is another NGO. I mean, the NGOs are endless out there. And then you've got the subsidiaries, which would be the nonprofit, which was the Fairbanks Climate Action Coalition. And then you got NEA Alaska, which is another NGO, and Alaska AFL-CIO, which is the unions of the groups that are within NEA Alaska, and the fire departments and the police departments, and they also do a lot of other industries out there that if you're a union you can fall under the umbrella of Alaska AFL-CIO. And these two NGOs, NEA Alaska and Alaska AFL-CIO, are currently sitting in Juneau with the other 120 Alaska School Board members, assembly, and students that have all flown in there at roughly around, and I told you I was going to bring the numbers back in for this one, 120 people, if they were to stay there for 5 days, include all their meals, hotels, flights, ferries, however they arrive there, because there's only 2 ways to get there, either by ferry or by plane. They currently have spent almost $150,000. This is just NEA of Alaska has spent this kind of money, approximately $150,000. That is currently staffing 5 of their employees that are not the teachers, but they are the people that are driving the buses. There are the people that may be in the kitchens. They may be the janitor, you know, the lower end of the pay scale, but extremely needed or have a relatable function within the organization that actually has some validity. So then you got Anchorage School, ASD, that, like I said, they have a budget that puts in $21,380 per student, and they cannot afford to educate their students because somehow they're $100 million over budget. 5 students, for every 5 students is $100,000. And the number of students that they have there is approximately right around 40,000. And you take those students and you put them and you include them into the overall equation of the 800 and somewhere right around $850 million is what their current budget is. But that's where the $21,380 come in. This is real money. This is based on the current base student allocation, how much their local funding is going to be, and how much the federal funding is going to be, the known numbers that they have. It's $21,380 that they have to spend. And they're demanding another $1 billion, not just ASD, but throughout the state, another $1 billion to be divided up amongst themselves so that they can retain more teachers. Yet that's the first thing that they're cutting right at the moment is teachers. The administrative staff is not going nowhere. They're keeping the administrative staff. But the assistant staff, on the other hand, the school bus drivers, the nurses, music, sports, all of those kind of items, that they don't consider those important for school. So they're eliminating those positions. Nurses really shocked me when I heard that one was on their chopping list. That they're removing several of the nurses that they have. Not all of them. They'll just end up having to have nurses that'll have to float from school to school to school because they won't have a dedicated nurse at each and every school after that. But there was 2 items that they made sure are going to be well funded, and so that they can continue to keep up their propaganda. The first thing is DEI. Diversity, equity, inclusion. Did not get cut from their budget. No. In fact, they're giving it more money dedicated out of that proposed budget that they just submitted to increase the outreach of their DEI. And you'll never guess what the second one is. It's community outreach. Amazing. You know how that works. Community outreach. We got to make sure the community knows exactly where we're at, why we need all this more money, because we're going to cut all of these valued positions instead of removing the overhead that is sucking the money away. And the programs like diversity, equity, inclusion that has destroyed our education system since it's been enacted. And it's been around for a while, but like Anchorage, they only officially put it in their curriculum during COVID, when none of us were able to attend. I actually live streamed those school board meetings that they were having. And they're in Anchorage when they were outright talking about DEI being their curriculum, how you've got the 3 steps of this person's 3 different people looking over the fence, and one's really short, one's middle high, that's just seeing with their eyes over the top edge, and then you got this other person that's way up there that can see over the fence with absolutely no problem. And under DEI, those 3 people are now going to have platforms put underneath each one, so the lower one down here is as tall as the person in the middle, and the person in the lower one are now also tall as the person that was way up here. And so you're all on an equal platform, but it's not equal, it's equality. All they did is lowered the standards of the persons that was way up here in their education, the fence metaphor. Their education, they are the honor roll, the straight A, the people that are, you'd call them the mini Einsteins of today, would be a best way to describe those people. And then you got the people down here in the middle, which I fall in that category. I'm kind of a little bit in the middle, a little bit up here, and a little bit down there. Depends on the subject that we're discussing about. And myself, but I'm middle of the road. And but I'm not at the caliber as the Einstein people. I mean, I was just in a group here just a little bit ago that's on X. It's Alaskan, some of the really good minds out there of Alaska that are getting together on a weekly basis and our daily basis, depending on where we're at right now. Right now we're on a daily basis. We meet up, they go live in spaces on X. If you follow me, you will be able to get the notifications. And once you get, like today, I posted today's broadcast is up there right now. If they might even still be live as I'm speaking to you right now, and you can go and join the conversation. This is Real Live Alaskans talking with other Alaskans. Ben Carpenter is on there right at the moment, just to give you an idea of people that are getting involved inside of these spaces. And we're talking real issues here in Alaska, the stuff that I'm talking to you about right now. So these NGOs, the Alaska School District, the ASD School Board, and their proposed budget, these NGOs down there in Juneau who have spent $100,000 to $150,000 to be there in Juneau for this week, for the Education Week in Juneau, to pour out their bleeding hearts, which they did for hours on end during the public testimony that we just had the week before. You heard them one after another. I streamed the evening one of those testimonies, all 4 hours of it. And you got to hear one bleeding heart after another say, don't cut our budget, give us more money, but don't make us accountable. Don't make us accountable for how we spend that money. Because if you really go and look at where that money is going, it's not making it to the children. And it's not in what they call their infrastructure. It's going to the administration up on top. It's going to these NGO unions, Alaska NEA, NEA Alaska, and Alaska AFL-CIO. They're receiving huge portions of this money. And then you got the teachers. It's not the other way around. Teachers are up here capitalizing on the bulk of the security of the money coming in so that they can help provide and have the resources available for top quality education to our children. No, it's everybody that's up above them all the way down. Now, the people that are running the education committees currently in Juneau and those that are in control of the finance committees in Juneau are all bought and paid for by these NGOs. These NGOs have them fully under their control with their thumbs, and they are making sure that these NGOs are, these Alaska legislators that are down there in Juneau that are sitting on these committees, are doing their bidding. They have, in effect, may not be directly monetarily, had actually money handed to them in their hand and said, here you go, this is what you get. go do our bidding. It's more along the lines of you're sitting on a board somewhere that you're receiving $100,000 a year to sit on this board, and this board wanted to make sure that you got elected into Alaska legislature as a legislator so that you could be there in Juneau lobbying for what they want by sitting on the committees, presenting the bills that they wrote. And if you don't believe me, catch the little clip that I put out, I think it was Saturday maybe, or it might have been Friday, about Alaska AFL-CIO, and they had their first public update for the legislative session, where they sat there and they talked about the we are the NGOs, we are the special interests. I got to get that right for that quote there. They are the special interests. They are the NGOs too. And but they talk about there's 30 or 40 bills that they have down there in Juneau that are their priority. Well, they're their priority because they're pretty much the ones that wrote them, that gave them to the legislature to submit for this legislative session down there, the 34th legislative session. And those 30 to 40 bills that they're going to be having heard down there is their agenda. It's not Alaskans' agenda. It's the NGO agenda. You look at the top 3 priorities of what's being discussed down there. I think it's SB 41, HB 69, and SB 87. So to break that down, the 41 is the mental health bill. A lot of people testifying for the school district about that bill today, talking about how they need the money because our children's mental health is totally deteriorated and they are not being able to get an quality education because the anxiety is too high, the pressure is too much, and the wokeness within our school districts is too unbearable, that their mental health is completely gone and deteriorated and they just can't cope with life. There's no other way to describe it when you describe the relationship of where our children are today compared to when we went to school, when I went to school. I'm graduated just before the 90s, so to kind of give you just an age reference there. I mean, tomorrow I get another year older. It's just the way things all fall in life. And we've got these educators out there, and we've got these legislators that are bought by the NGOs, that are bought and paid for union shills, that are given tons and tons of our taxpayer money directly from the pockets of the legislators and police force and our teachers and our medical field, to be sitting there in Juneau lobbying them, where us average people whose money that they're taking from our permanent fund dividends, which is where over half of the budget is being paid from now, that half of the budget that they're stealing directly out of our pockets that we need for fuel oil, need to buy new tires, we may have a medical bill we need to get paid. We may have had a relative that we've got expenses now that we just wasn't expecting. We had to take over a house payment because our health went downhill, and that extra money that they're stealing from us to give to these NGOs who wrote the bills that they're passing in Juneau to bankrupt our state so that they can take the rest of the permanent fund dividend. I know, I've said a lot going on here today. It's a big circle. Take a moment. Right now, I'm just kind of looking down and seeing if anybody has said anything on chat, and I am not seeing anything on chat. So you guys are pretty quiet out there. And we got a couple people watching on the YouTube and Facebook and X. You guys are outperforming everybody again there over on X. I wish I could see what your guys' comments were right at the moment. I'm showing 50 online watching on X, so that is phenomenal. So if you haven't shared yet, and Rumble doesn't give me any stats, so I don't know if there's anybody watching me over there on Rumble or not. But thank you all for tuning in tonight. Again, share this video. The more people that are listening to my ramblings, hopefully I'm educating enough to where you're grasping all the different factions that I'm trying to bring in this very short period of time. I've talked about NGOs, I've talked about nonprofits, I've talked about our Alaska legislators, I've talked about our local government, and now let's bring in the federal government into this whole picture. So we got President Trump that's talking about getting rid of the Department of Education and letting that money come back into the states and let that be done at a state level, state control. The money is no longer going to be going through this big conglomerate out there called the Department of Education that puts all these strings and restrictions on how we're able to spend that money. If you don't have these certain policies put into your school, if you're not DEI compliant, which he got rid of, that's why ASD, what they just did with their budget is totally against what has been just mandated at the federal level that they can do. You got all the money that's being tied to that's going to go directly to our state. Here's the problem. You're going to put it into the hands of the same people here within our state that already work for NGOs. They don't work for us. They work for these NGOs. They work for Alaska, NEA Alaska. They work for Alaska AFL-CIO. They work for the Four-Acre Group. They work for the Alaska Housing Authority. They work for the Cook Inlet Housing Authority. They work for the Rasmussen Foundation. And boy, that one's always a sore one with me because of Natasha von Imhoff. Her becoming a legislator while her family was running this $1 billion NGO operation out there, distributing all of the local, state, and federal funds that flows in, plus the philanthropy money. I mean, they were started up with a philanthropist, Rasmussen, that put in, I think it was like $250 million or something like that originally. I may be way off on the number. But they originally started out as philanthropists looking to do good in Alaska. And they found out that they could get rich while doing it. Well, $1 Million Trust Fund, Natasha von Imhoff got elected into the Senate, and she was sitting as the chair of the Finance Committee for several years. Then she was the vice chair her last term, excuse me, during COVID. And hundreds of millions of billions of dollars, especially during COVID, was flowing directly into her family's pockets. And they were distributing that money out throughout our state. This is kind of when the Native movement started getting a really good handful of money out there and started really moving up in the ranks for someone that's on the tip of my tongue, because they didn't have a face before COVID. But when all of that money come running into our state, boy, all these different nonprofit organizations all leaped in on it and took advantage of it because they could go through all the little loopholes to be able to receive that money. I mean, Anchorage Assembly doled that money out to the nonprofits like candy, and it was unreal. I mean, where do you think the Alaska Housing Coalition came from? And Meg Zantel, one of the assembly members that sits on the on that coalition as one of the board members, receiving a paycheck from them at the same time she's receiving a paycheck from the Anchorage Muni for her seat on the assembly, and she's double dipping all over the place, getting all of these different paychecks, pushing what the NGOs, or in their case, the Alaska Homeless Coalition is an NGO. They're not a non-profit, so to speak. They literally are a government-funded, locally, state, and federally receiving funds for the operation of what they are currently doing out there, trying to house all the homeless. In the last decade, they've had not the coalition themselves, but the homeless problem has had $1.5 billion funneled into just Anchorage alone to deal with roughly 3,000 people. Imagine what $1.5 billion could have bought in the last decade for these homeless people. I mean, we literally could have a mass shelter system set up that has a 2,000 bed capacity that's an almost hotel style that has every government organization within it, from drug treatment to here, get your eyes checked out, to here, have a basic medical appointment. Here's the police department set up inside of there because something unspeakable happened to you, which is very commonplace here in Alaska. For domestic violence and things like that, a place to go report it, some place to go get your help, a drug rehabilitation center that has Alcoholics Anonymous in it, that has where you can go and get your methadone, where the stuff is available underneath one roof to be able to get your help, and then a transition facility after that that now takes you out of the communal living and moves you into an individual small little tiny home. And then from that tiny home, when you get more established and you got a good job now because you've worked through all the steps and programs to get you back off of the street life and into real life, now you're making all your own money. Now we move you back out into the real world, help you get an apartment somewhere or help you buy a house. And by help means showing you how, not giving you the money to do it. And they've got very successful programs down on Lower 48 that does all of this. And government got in the way, stopped them from doing it. And so they got around government. They bought a piece of property that was outside of the restrictions of government control. They built their own community, and this was a bunch of philanthropists that did this. And they built the facility that I'm talking about right now, where they had a mass influx, where it was communal living, where they did the processing of where were you at in stages of life within your homelessness, let you get you where you need to go to help moving you up that ramp in life to becoming a self-independent person once again. And those that went into this facility right off the bat, if they were discovered that, they've just had some hard knocks in life, they lost their job, is the only reason why they're out on the streets. They're not drug addicts, they're not alcoholics, they don't have a mental breakdowns to where they need to be in like API here in Alaska. They're have all their facilities. It was one of those hard knocks in life. Here, let's move you into the middle of the road right now. The one where you've got the help, or you've seen the help, but you can't afford anything yet. Let's get you on the road to where you can actually get a job and start earning money. And then as they start earning money, they move up to the next stage, which is now they're making enough money to be able to be completely 100% off of government assistance, because as they move up in the pay scale, they're also paying for the place they're living in right now during this temporary, until they get to a point in achievement in life that they're making enough money that they no longer qualify to be living here in this homeless facility that was built, that has now transitioned them back out into the real world, 100% covering everything all on their own. And it's a very self-fulfilling way to get people off of the streets. They're having an 87% success rate where they have implemented this. Government keeps trying to do it. This is the plan that they Anchorage Homeless Coalition says that they have going on there, but they step over on their own toes every time they turn around. You don't spend $1.5 billion in 10 years as an NGO that they were giving both state, federal, and local money to use to eliminate a homeless problem and not have it eliminated or have a solid solution already in place that makes sure that the moment that you're found homeless on the streets, you're immediately helped out and brought onto the road of recovery. If you're not ready for the road of recovery, then you just remain homeless on the streets, period. End of discussion. You break the law, you end up going to jail. You don't just get oh, woe is me, you're homeless, you broke the law, so we'll just let you go. We'll just let you go. It's okay. We won't commit you. We won't do any of that stuff, because their goal is never to fix the problem. You can't get rich off of fixing a problem. And that's why these NGOs, like the Cook Inlet Housing Authority, the Alaska Housing Authority, the Four Acre Group, the Rasmussen Foundation, Siri, NANA, these are native corporations that don't do anything for their people. And don't get me wrong, they give them their dividends, but it depends on how much blood you have within your body and how long you've been in Alaska. It depends on how many shares that you have, and were your relatives smart enough before they passed away to forward their shares on to you, so that you now own them instead of being absorbed back into the corporation because your parents weren't smart enough to transfer them to you. so on and so forth. I mean, the rules, they are all different for each individual tribe out there, but it's only meant to get the corporations richer. And look at the lifestyles. I mean, they're still living with honey buckets, and in many places out there. And it's not just Alaska Natives, it's also Alaskans that are living that way. But I'm talking about the Alaska Natives who have billion-dollar corporations. I mean, they own the Princess Cruise Lines. They own incarceration centers around the world, prisons. I mean, I could go through all the different things that they own out there, construction companies, the works. They are rich. They have a lot of money. I mean, they're developing up their own resources. They're putting this money directly into their pocket on a daily basis. I gotta take just a second here. And they're utilizing it for their own greed. It has nothing to do with making sure the people that they represent is being represented. Same on our local level. When it comes to our Alaska legislators, they don't represent us. They represent the NGOs. The NGOs that bought and paid for them. The ones that many of them sit on the board of directors within those NGOs that are receiving the second paycheck from them. So the $87,000 that legislator in Juneau is receiving is just one of their paychecks. Just like Meg Zantel in Anchorage. Only one of her paychecks is coming from the Anchorage Assembly. The other paycheck is coming from, you got it, the Alaska Homeless Coalition. And then you've got, who knows how many other organizations she's involved with. I mean, Begich is another one out there that is just despicable. I mean, look at how many pots of money he's got. Or not Begich, but the previous mayor before Bronson. My brain is drawing a blank right at the moment. I hate when that happens. But he owns so much real estate around the state, it's unreal. And a lot of that real estate that he's directly in the middle of is also part of the Alaska Homeless Coalition. And so he's making money hand over fist over the contracts to house these homeless within the buildings that he owns. So he's raking in millions every time you turn around, all because of who he is and these NGOs and these corrupt politicians. That's why Alaska is #2 on the FBI list. I mean, Doge, Elon Musk, if you're listening to this, I know I'm broadcasting on X right now, and maybe your algorithms will pick this up. Elon, if you're listening, once you're done with them down in Washington, come to Alaska for a little while. I mean, we could be producing your rocket fuel for you. We're more than happy to provide the resources to get your rockets up and off of the ground. I mean, we've got the Kodiak launch facility there. Maybe you could utilize that to help you expedite more launches out there in the world. Get Alaska completely connected to Starlink. Let's get rid of these subsidiaries going to the telephone companies out there like GCI and AT&T and so on and so forth. I mean, we've got another quintillion that's got another line that's broken going to the North Slope. And we really do need to work hard to help change the direction our state is going in. I mean, the hundreds of millions, I mean, $800 million contract to GCI to lay fiber optics. Well, that $800 million contract that they were given, we could have gave it to you, Elon, and you would have took maybe 20%, maybe, and dedicated an entire network of Starlink satellites out there, and there wouldn't be a place in Alaska that you wouldn't be able to connect up. And I saw your advertisement on the Super Bowl. You know, if you got T-Mobile, right now, you can get free satellite connection through T-Mobile and till July. And you can take your own phone. From my understanding, you can take your own phone. Don't even have to be on T-Mobile. Up until July, go sign up for the program, and you can connect into his Starlink and be making your phone calls off of Elon Musk's network. And you wouldn't have to worry about ever dropping a call, no matter where you are. I mean, there's so many places. I mean, I can't go to Talkeetna and have a phone that works. The phone dies the minute I make it past Willow. And then GCI's connection through that area from Willow all the way to Talkeetna is virtually non-existent. And then once you get to Talkeetna, you're lucky to get, you might have your 5G service, but you lose your internet service. There is no internet connection whatsoever at the junction there to turn off to go to Talkeetna. There is no internet there whatsoever. I mean, you're lucky to even get a bar on your phone for phone service. And this is GCI, the one that keeps receiving these hundreds of millions of dollars every single year from our Alaska state legislators. Another private business that is being subsidized because they support the rural communities. They're making sure that they're connected. They're just making sure they're getting as much money as they possibly can off of us, and we're paying the price. We're paying our dividends. We're losing our dividends, and we're going to lose every penny of our dividends in the next 2 years. It's going to be gone. They've already guaranteed that this year with the House Bill 69, which is education, and the Senate Bill 87, which is the pensions and defined benefits, and with Senate Bill 41, which is the mental health budget, which is also including the education portion of the mental health budget, because our kids are just so mentally declined now that we really need to increase that for their benefit. Listening to the testimonies being given today by the 120 some NGOs from NEA Alaska, the Alaska School Board, the Alaska Assembly, and students that they flew into Juneau for Education Week to sit there and talk to them about these education woes of not having enough money, that they took $100,000 to $150,000 to fly all these people in to make sure they were there for this Education Week that they do every single year. So think about that. They have no money to educate our students, but they don't have no problem spending $150,000 to send them all to Juneau to go lobby that they don't have any money to be able to educate our students with. You can hear the irony behind all of that. Besides their normal NGOs, and then that's where that video clip that I made last Saturday comes into play, or this just last Saturday that I posted up there, showing Alaska AFL CIO talking about they are the special interest and one of their affiliates, which is Alaska, NEA Alaska, and how they work hand in hand with each other, and how education and the defined benefits and pension, and as a subnote, energy, which is where, you can hear them openly say the brownouts that are going to happen in Fairbanks. See how I just took this whole entire video conversation and just brought it all full circle again? Man, I think I pretty much talked myself out here for the moment. As for these subjects, I've just barely touched the top edge of what is really going on. But to kind of bring this back full circle where this entire broadcast started, we are Alaskans, and we are living on the Democrat Plantation. We no longer have any control over our government. The NGOs, the unelected bureaucrats, the for-profit corporations like ConocoPhillips, Hillcorp, the works, they own our legislators. Alaska AFL-CIO very blatantly said in the 4-minute clip I made out of their 20-minute long video that they had. In that 4-minute clip, they talk about the 30 to 40 bills that they wrote. They didn't say they wrote them, but basically that's what's implied here. That the paid-for Alaska legislators that they own, and they openly acknowledge that the Education Committee in the House, excuse me, where the education bill for HB 69 has been started in, the one that gives the $1,804 increase over the next 3 years, and an inflation proofing that's far beyond what they ever received before, beyond that, and the defined benefits and pension program. Who do you think wrote those bills? Honestly, our legislators that are down there, they're not that smart. They really aren't. They didn't write those bills. The education one, maybe. I mean, that one was so simple. That was 1 page. But the defined benefits and pensions program, on the other hand, they didn't write that. Our legislators are not that smart. They really are not that smart. that they were written by the NGOs out there that have their lobbyists sitting down in Juneau at the start of the legislative session. They'll be gone until there until the very last day, making sure their agenda gets passed. They openly admit during that 4-minute clip that I made that they expect to see both defined benefits and pensions. That one's kind of, they're pretty sure that one's going to pass, but they're pretty confident it will, and they're damn sure the education budget bill is going to pass. It's going to make it through both the House and the Senate with flying colors, and then they acknowledge the governor is going to veto that bill, and then it's going to go back to the legislature to try to override the veto, and they acknowledge that they don't have enough votes to be able to override the veto. But don't you worry, they are already in the works to work. This is Governor Dunleavy's last term, that of either getting some new governor elected that is on their side of the subject that will not veto the bill when it goes through. And they're still actively working to convert either enough rhinos over to become part of the majority that will override those vetoes. And you know who those rhinos that are currently down there are. They're sitting in the majorities, not the minority where they should be. In fact, that if we had real Republicans sitting down there, they would be the majority running both the Senate and the House right now, but we don't have real Republicans sitting down there. We have a very minority set of Republicans, and it is the Democrats who are in full control with the rhino Republicans, the ones that call themselves Republicans but are really Democrats, because year after year after year they just go and sign up with them, like Kelly Merrick, Bert Stedman, Kathy Giesel. I mean, there's a pretty big list of the rhinos that are down there. It is just absolutely shameful for what keeps happening in Juneau year after year. And what's even more shameful is we have Alaskans that continue to keep voting them back in instead of replacing them like they should have done decades ago, because that's how many of them have been there. How long they've been there is decades. All right. I'm off of my soapbox for tonight. I just wanted to get on here and rant about the Alaska news that we had going on. One more thing, because Alaska Gas and Development Corporation was on today. They were also part of the committees that was heard today, about the direction of where that is going. They're saying that with the current deal that President Trump is trying to help broker for Alaska with Japan and the Asian market, that if we can get the gas line built, that maybe by 2030, 2031, Hillcorp would be able to get some of the wells opened up and going in the Cook Inlet or on the shoreline. They have leases in both areas that have great potential to be able to get the LNG back into production again in the short term, while they're doing the development of being able to open up the new resources of the areas that have never been drilled in before, and be able to get that to market, which would be the 2030, 2031 time frame year-wise that I was just talking about. In the meantime, they're going to also work on getting a part of the Nikiski plants down there set up to be able to do the processing of LNG, and so that they can supply the market here locally, because they are rapidly declining on what they have there in the fields right now, and unless they get a replacement, we currently have no choice but to import. But that's only for the short term. The positive to that is that once they get these new wells going again, we would actually be producing enough LNG to reopen back up ourselves of LNG to the Asian market, or Japan, where we used to have it, and be able to reopen back up that market again. And if the investments come true for the LNG line from Prudhoe Bay, there is enough LNG just on the known resources that we Alaskans own, or I should say our Alaska government owns, which I still think is a despicable thing that ever happened to Alaska, just like the federal government owning 61% plus of our land, and our local government owns more land than the natives here, and us private own less than 2% of the land here in Alaska. So that just gives you a breakdown of where all the land in Alaska goes to. And I think the native allotment is something around 13, 14%. The state has the next highest percentage. I think it's around 24%. And then the federal government has the 61%. I mean, it's a really small distribution, and federal government controls it all. If we can get Trump to open back up, I mean, personally, if I was Trump, I would be renaming more than just Mount McKinley. I would rename Anwar. I'd completely rename it to something totally else, something that is not even a name that anybody would ever think of, and rename the Anwar territory, and watch how all of those laws and restrictions that have been written against Anwar, all of a sudden, wait a minute, those laws and restrictions no longer apply because it's now not named that anymore. That just means that they just opened it back up for us to have the possibility to totally start extracting all of that back out. Federal government gets the EPA off of our back, and let's get those mines going. I mean, we've got two very large potential mines, rare earth minerals. Both of them were ready to go. One of them's just waiting on the road so that they can get it done. The other one is waiting for the permission to save the less than 0.01% of the fish down in the Bristol Bay's approval that has said that only a apocalyptic God-style apocalypse sort of destruction, I mean Noah and the Ark type destruction, that would have to happen before that 0.01% of the tributaries that supply fish into the Cook Inlet would ever have a chance of being damaged to open that one back up and really open up our market. And for Alaskans to get off their butt and get our road going across from Anchorage into the Matsu Valley, the bridge that has been planned for who knows how long, but they just won't do it because there's no money, and get Port McKenzie opened up and become direct competition to the Port of Anchorage, or as they call it now, the Port of Alaska. Direct competition would definitely make things, in that bridge that they put in between Matanuska and Anchorage that would go through Government Hill there and connect to the where the other port is on the other side, and that would and make that a toll bridge. And because it's a deep water port that never has to be dredged, and it's a brand new infrastructure which would have modern technology, robots controlling the removal of the containers off of the ships, something that the Anchorage port refuses to do. They will not modernize because that takes away the union jobs that they want to make sure continue to get paid, when they could do it 1,000 times cheaper if they had modern technology doing it with people sitting behind desks with a joystick and a computer in front of them controlling these big machines that reach out onto the ship, grab the container, pull it back, move it, stack it, put it onto trucks. There's no human action other than a person grabbing the truck and pulling it out and driving it away to their next destination. And because a good portion of those materials that are going through are going to have to go into Anchorage because that's where the largest population sits. We've got the toll bridge sitting there that these trucks are now having to pay a toll on every time they go across to go deliver the goods that have been delivered to the Point McKenzie's port there. And you can just watch the economy grow and all this new land. The Mayor LaFrance wouldn't have to worry about her 10,000 new homes in Anchorage, which they don't have the land for. They have no place to put another 10,000 homes. They wouldn't have to worry about that stupid pipe dream that's just another money laundering funnel to the NGOs, the people there that have all that money rolling in through their pockets already. And it'll bring it into the economy, into the Matsu Valley, and watch the Matsu Valley flourish. Watch all of these areas begin to develop up. Watch all these homes, all these people move into our state. Make it business friendly. Okay, I have literally gone full circle here, and I'm out of material for tonight just because it's been a very long day, and again, I could keep going on and on and on as I keep building onto this discussion. If you haven't liked and shared this video, please do that right now. Like it, share it. If you're not subscribed to us on our channels, subscribe to us. If you're not subscribed to me on X yet, please go and subscribe to me on X. You can be found everywhere at Politadick. That's Politadick. And but subscribe to us. Like I said, we're having conversations over there on X on a nightly basis. It's usually put on, like, I believe it's Rants Alaska and We the People, and we had Ben Carpenter as one of the speakers on there tonight. And you guys could all come and join the conversation. Just be someone that sits there and listens, or maybe you have something that you would like to add to the conversation. These are real Alaskans talking about real issues. We're not there to call people names. We're not there to belittle people, call them trolls, or, you know, try to make them feel small, say you got Trump derangement syndrome or anything else like that, or you're just a Nazi. If you're one of those people, that's the only reason why you want to go and join the space. You will find yourself booted in 2 seconds flat, and you'll never be allowed back into the space again. I guarantee you that. But if you're a real Alaskan that really wants to start dealing with the real problems that we're having, like our LNG shortage, the NGOs who are bought and paid for our legislators that are sitting in the majorities in Juneau right now, and sitting with the majorities within the assemblies in Anchorage and Fairbanks and Juneau. If you're one of those people out there that really wants to start having real change take place in Alaska, again, come and join me over there on X. Subscribe to me. I put the notification up. You can see that's my last post besides this one. It'll be the one just before this one there on X. And but that was the spaces that I was in. And click on that space. You can listen to the pre-recorded program, or go and subscribe to who the space comes from, because that is usually the person that is hosting the space every night. And a bunch of Alaskans, depending on the subject, or it could be a nationwide discussion. They had one of those over the weekend. I think we had somewhere a little over 100, 200 people in the conversation on that day. And I just kicked back and did nothing but sat and listened for a while for the conversation that was going on. There was a lot going on there, and then all of a sudden the discussion just up and dropped. Our host was going to a district meeting here in Alaska and was hoping to keep us live through the district meeting while he was there. And but I'm pretty sure as soon as he entered the building, he lost all internet connection. And there went the space too on top of that. So the discussion we were having that day kind of got cut off. But you guys all got the idea of exactly what is going on here. It's up to us individuals to working together to make things happen. So again, like, share, subscribe. Click the bell to be notified every time we go live. Facebook is finally opening back up my platform again. At least my posts are reaching people, where, you know, out of my 6,000 followers that are here on Facebook, I was receiving less than 1% return on the posts that I was putting out there. I'm now somewhere up around 30%, at least for follower count, on just about every post that I'm doing. And I have posts that are out there that are doing in numbers of 20, 30,000 people that they're reaching now. I'm starting to slowly see the numbers coming back. I haven't seen the videos doing good yet. Right now, the biggest audience that we've got going on is on X, and when it comes to Facebook, they're non-existent. That just tells me Facebook is still not propagating the videos out there, but at least they're propagating my content. I share a lot of pictures, usually with the links to the articles, and putting my 2 cents up on top. And I've been working on the platform at Politadick to open and expand that, and we're soon going to be getting Google listed, so you'll be able to find Politadick on Google, and Google Maps and all of that good stuff, so that we get a little bit more visibility out there, and so that the world out there can access and find us on a regular basis just by typing in our name. Thank you guys all for being here again tonight, and we will see you the next time.